they need us to be competitive by nature in order to win their business and keep their business. So that's why we also have to stay on our toes. Our team has also, in the last few years, gotten more and more involved in dealing with athletes and entertainers. So sports and entertainment over the last few years, and Fernando will talk about it on his side of the fence, but dealing with athletes and entertainers, kind of high-profile personalities, has become a growing part of our business, and that's why we want to spend more time here on campus. This is an athletic powerhouse, right? So we want to make sure that we're staying in touch with Tom, the AD, the coaches, to see if there's any kind of folks that might naturally fall into our client base. In dealing with athletes and entertainers is a very, very kind of specific, it's kind of a niche market. What do you think athletes and entertainers, what kind of nuance does their income profile or earnings profile have versus a typical family? What do you guys think? How does their earnings differ from a typical American family? Yeah, Max.
They generate a lot of money from advertising and merchandise.
Okay, yeah. So sponsorships, advertising, merchandise. That's not your average, your average American family. I don't go out there and, Adidas doesn't call me and put me in the pinstripe suit, the 3 stripes, right? Anyone else? Do you have an answer? Anyone? Yes?
They get money from winning games.
Yeah. Could be kind of performance bonuses, right? Either they do really well, if it's a running back, you have a 1,000-yard season, well then you got a little bit of a bonus. If you make it to the AFC title game, and every step thereafter you get more and more of a bonus. Anything else? Yes? Betting. Touchy subject actually right now with what's happened recently in basketball. I don't know if you guys caught the news. Did you guys catch the news? Actually, a Miami Heat player was involved in that. What am I talking about? You're nodding your head. What am I talking about? I'm sorry? Yeah, and what happened? Gambling, right? So mixing those two, when you have an athlete that can maybe throw a game, oh, I missed a shot, I missed the buzzer beater by accident, and spreads and whatnot, that's a little bit of a tricky area. Anyone else as far as earnings go? How about the length of their earnings? Let me just put up the slide. It's kind of, by the way, disclaimers you have. So this is what kind of the earnings profile looks like, the difference between athletes and entertainers, okay? The athlete has a very short, kind of 10 years. Well, what's the average? Can anyone guess what the average length of an NFL player's playing career is? 2 years? Behind you? 7? 3 years. So 2, 3, 3. 3 is the right answer. Imagine that. You can make some good money for a few years, but then it tails off. Then what do you have to rely on, guys? Maybe you can try again, another team, but then you have to rely on your scholarship, okay? So that's why it's great to see Fernando Mendoza, who in all the press and the interviews and what have you, he talks about his interest in finance, he talks about doing well here at Columbus, he talks about graduating from Cal Berkeley in 3 years, and now he's actually getting his MBA. In his 4th year of college, he's getting his MBA at Indiana. So if you're an athlete, that's great. You have God-given talents, but they may be short-lived. So that's something that a typical athlete has to keep in mind. Entertainers, on the other hand, can have kind of a longer-lasting earnings profile, but it's going to be spotty, right? Sometimes it takes a while for someone to have a hit song or a hit record, and then you're kind of, living on, little gigs here and there. So just bear that in mind. These are interesting things. And then this other stat over here on the right-hand side is kind of, it's important. We all hear about it, right? When you're a high-profile athlete or an entertainer, you have an entourage surrounding you, right? My boys, my guys, the clubs, the parties, and what have you. And so that money goes out the door. That money goes out the door. And if all of a sudden you're an athlete and that earnings profile, those earnings have disappeared, and you still have the hangers on and what have you, it becomes very, very difficult for them. So a lot of them fall into financial trouble. And that's the same case for boxers. There's very, very many well-known cases for boxers and other athletes, okay? Any questions around that? So what do we try to do? We have to, in some of the things that we do, the financial products that we think about for athletes in particular, we need to generate kind of income so that, you know, we put them in products that can generate income from year 20 out. So we think about kind of retirement plans, we think about insurance policies. There's a number of different financial products that help us kind of smooth it out for the athletes. Another important thing that athletes in particular, and entertainers too, they both face this, is that most of the time they're working for themselves and they generate these earnings, but they don't sock away money to pay the tax, right? So a lot of times when you work for a big company like ours, those taxes are taken from your paycheck. So you don't have to worry about that. In this case, they typically aren't. So that's something that they need to account for. So I just want to spend a few moments about that. The other families that we work with, generally we're talking about legacy wealth, so families that have generational wealth. We're talking about newly created wealth, so entrepreneurs, business owners, and then highly paid executives, CEOs and CFOs, kind of C-suite executives at different firms, okay? Any questions about what I do? I'm gonna get into a few other things now. Okay, good. Now, who knows what an equity is? Who knows what stocks are? Okay, only 3 hands? I thought we were finance bros here. Okay, so who's gonna give me a definition for equity? Who do you know? What's a stock or what is equity? Let's talk about equity in a company.
Equity is like how much, I think, I'm not sure, I can't remember. Like how much you have in that, like your percentage or how much you own in that certain like stock or like in that company.
Okay. Anyone else? What is a shareholder in a company? Yes.
Part owner of the company.
Part owner of the company, okay. Anyone else? No? You got it right? Yeah, you did. You're an owner of a company, right? So a shareholder is an ownership stake in a company. Now, let me just draw this up here quickly. A lot of times, and I'm sure Fernando will walk through in his own discussion, if you just have the very basic concepts of a balance sheet, if you understand what a balance sheet is, it can help describe and explain away many different financial instruments, many different kind of positions in a company. So a balance sheet is very simply, draw a big rectangle here, right? Left side is going to be assets minus liabilities, right? These are liabilities, and then what's left over is the equity position, okay? A lot of times we talk about equity owners as residual owners. It's a residual stake in a company. That means that the productive capacity of the company, the assets, right? All these assets, hopefully they're productive and they're not dead wood. These assets go ahead and pay off these liabilities one by one. There's senior liabilities and subordinate and other things. So they have to pay the utility bill, make sure the lights are on, pay the employees' salaries, and other indebtedness of the company. And what's left over after you pay off all this debt and kind of short-term payables is the equity. A company that's doing well is able to pay this off and generate more, well then the equity value grows, right? So what's the difference? What is a bond now? What is debt? Anyone want to take a stab at a bond? Yes.
No, not really a bond with the debt.
Uh-huh.
Just the loss of money. Or like when you owe someone a certain amount and you can't really pay it, I'm guessing it keeps growing until you have to pay it back.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, over there.
A bond is like, a bond is something that grows over time, but it takes a long time to grow. Where it's like a good investment, because you're gonna make your money back, but it's gonna take some time.
You're on the right track. Anyone else? Yes.
Isn't that similar to the government gives you? Like right now they're like asking for money and
Yep. Yeah, perfect. So a bond or debt is a contractual obligation. Here in the case of equity, there's no contract. You own these shares, you own this small little stake in a company or maybe a large stake. And we'll talk about large stakes when we talk about private companies and private equity, okay? That's what Aries is gonna get. Fernando's gonna get into that in a moment. But here, there's no contractual anything. If there's money left over, you may get a dividend. If there's money left over, you may get a special dividend, a one-time kind of cash dividend for being a shareholder. Thank you very much for supporting our company. But a bond or debt is a contractual obligation. So here, being a contractual obligation, if the company doesn't pay its debt, they have two options. They either declare bankruptcy or they reorganize their debts, right? So debt is a contractual obligation. As a result, you have kind of an expected return of debt that's typically lower because it's contractual, and you're also further up on the right-hand side of the balance sheet. The further up you are here on the right-hand side of the balance sheet, the safer you are. So debt is typically up here, and those assets are paying the debt holders first before equity holders get anything. This is the same way that a bankruptcy works, right? In a bankruptcy, well, these assets, well, they go ahead and liquidate these assets, whatever is available after they liquidate them, first goes off to pay kind of a cash flow waterfall. We think about this idea of a cash flow waterfall where you first pay off the senior most debt, then the next sliver of debt, and the next sliver of debt down to the equity. In a bankruptcy, equity gets pretty much wiped out. Almost all the time gets wiped out, okay? So lower expected returns, generally 5, 10-year, 30-year tenor maturities, and then an interest rate that's gonna basically compensate investors for the additional risk, okay? Those are bonds. Any questions about bonds? Now, you guys, growing up, and I was going to college in the 1990s, and then, I'll get into my story later. We'll talk about my career path later if we have time. But, and Colleen, close your ears. The Preppy Handbook, okay, the Preppy Handbook, which is a fun book to read, said that bond trading is the most fun that you have with your clothes on. Okay, so look up the Preppy Handbook and check it out. Just a little bit of an aside. So that's bonds. And then cash as well, cash, it earns interest. We also happen to be here today, the Federal Reserve, our central bank, you know what happened today with interest rates? Anyone knows? Huh? FOMC, yes, good. What does that stand for? Open Markets Committee. Yes, how are you?
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, so the FOMC met today, and they lowered interest rates. Okay, they lowered interest rates. So, cash has a yield as well, and it's just good to have a stability, a little bit of cash on hand to manage portfolios. Now, those are the three traditional investment classes: stocks, bonds, and cash. When we think about kind of putting together portfolios for clients, we think about these asset classes, okay? The problem with owning these traditional asset classes is that you're at the mercy of the market. You're only gonna do well if these assets rise in value. What that means is generally you need an economy that's expanding, right, typically, and an equity market that's doing well and prices are rising for equities. In the case of bonds, they generally rise or you make money with bonds if interest rates are stable or falling. If interest rates are rising, it's kind of anyone's guess what your return might be. But you're at the mercy of the market. So in the 60s and 70s, there was a subset of investors that were going ahead and taking, as liquidity improved in markets, and you could start betting against securities. You can start betting against the shares of Nasdaq. You can start betting against certain bonds. You're actually expecting those prices to fall, but those investments were not available to the public market, right? Because public investors typically have a certain risk profile. Only those investments, which we'll call hedge funds now, the evolution of hedge funds was only available to large institutions, right, that were sophisticated, and very high net worth investors that were sophisticated, had a higher than normal net worth, didn't rely on any of these alternative investments, hedge funds and the like, for the day-to-day living, right? They can think about it as 5, 10-year, 20-year money. And so these types of investments started to do well because they could make money in all markets. If you could bet against the market when the market's kind of traded off, it could protect the downside in your portfolio. If you own an equity portfolio and you have an equity portfolio, let's see equity prices kind of move like this. Right, just these equities, and a big decline, oh my God, down here. So if you could create a portfolio that could protect capital on the downside, and you could smooth out this ride, right, for the typical investor, that's a better experience for them. So let's think about just quickly some hedge fund strategies, alternative investment strategies. You have, let's say I wanted to, actually, we'll just leave it there, okay? So you guys kind of get the gist of where hedge funds and alternative investments start playing a bigger and bigger part. You start to see these in endowments of big universities. They started to do more in public markets with hedge funds, but also in private markets. But then slowly but surely, there was a whole class of other investors, and I'm gonna turn it over to Fernando now to kind of get into that. There was a class of other investors that started to look at private securities and private companies to look into. So Fernando Munoz, why don't you come, kind of take it from there, talk about private markets, and then we'll get into the fun part, which is sports and investing in sports.
Sure. I'd like to take one step back, because I think in our industry, by the way, if you ever catch on Instagram or TikTok, there's these videos that are mocking finance bros. And they use these terms that nobody even knows what they're talking about, but it's kind of like, and every industry is like that, but I think finance is the worst. But so the only thing I will warn you is, because it's not your fault if you don't understand the terminology. There's a lot of assumptions, like people throw terms out there and think you know, like how you don't wake up one day knowing, what volatility. What is volatility? But when you're trying to get an internship, an externship in high school, or like in the game in college now, is to get the internship, because that's how you ultimately get a job. These days, you get your job after graduation by the internship. So the internship, you gotta nail it. And so when you're chatting with someone, you kind of have to know a little bit about what you're talking about. Just get the lingo down. So Ken and I are both in the world of finance and investing, but that's a giant world. And so, Ken is kind of like the equivalent of a doctor, and I'm representing a drug company, a pharmaceutical company. Both in the field of medicine, what he does every day with his life is quite different than what I do. In fact, if I'm a pharmaceutical rep, I go knock on his door and say, I know you have a lot of medicine for cholesterol. Mine's better. The rest of these are, you really should. By the way, you want to go play a round of golf? I can tell you all about my medicine. And so we're just trying to get his attention, because he's got the whole entire supermarket available to him. Which ketchup should I be grabbing? And so that's what I do with Ken. I work for a money manager, okay? And so when you think of money managers, they have bond managers, stock managers. I'm in the world of private investments, private equity, private credit, private sports businesses. The biggest one in my field is Blackstone. Anybody ever heard of Blackstone? Yeah, they buy real estate, Blackstone is just buying everything in the world, $1 trillion. Mine's not small, it's $600 billion. Apollo, it's another one. Carlyle, KKR, these are money managers. And frankly, we don't know Ken's clients. If I ask Ken to talk about a client that has 5 million, 10 million with him, he could tell me the whole life story, how he made his money, his daughter's going to college here, and everything. When we manage money, we manage a fund, a sports media fund. And if I'm lucky, I can convince this man here to put 5% of every one of his clients' investments in my fund. He goes, oh, okay, you convinced me, Fernando. Sports media is a great diversifier. It doesn't behave like anything else. And there are some other ones out there. Mark Cuban just launched a sports fund. There's a couple others. But I think you guys are the best. So I'm going to start putting the Aries SME, Sports Media Entertainment Opportunities Fund, in all of my clients. So if your parents have an account with him at Merrill Lynch, they'll look at their monthly statement and they'll say, oh, look, we have $100,000 with this thing called Aries, because he recommended it. So his world is different than my world. Yes, sir?
So basically, if I understand
That's right. So, in my company, there are 4,000 employees. Some of them are doing analytical work. They have accounting majors. They're the ones that are running all the numbers. They're not doing what I'm doing. I'm basically a sales guy. Okay? Whether I'm in Tampa or Miami or Boca Raton, and I'm going to Ken and the other Kens in the state of Florida, and I'm like, hey, Ken, if you're gonna be doing anything with private equity, you really should be doing it with Ares, because we're the best. And let me tell you why, we're better than Apollo or Blackstone. So my client is Ken. And so I just simply want you to know that there's this world that you can call them asset managers, investment managers, money managers, private equity managers, whatever you want to call it. They're big companies with 1,000 employees. And then, have you ever heard of Morgan Stanley? Okay. Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, UBS. Every town has financial advisors who are sitting down with your mom and dad, if they have enough. Well, you got to be really rich to be his client. But if you sit down and say, hey, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. And, oh, you want Bitcoin? Okay. You want, okay. So he's educating your clients. We don't even know the names of our investors. We're managing a lot of money. My company manages $600 billion, $17 billion alone in sports. And so when we have a fund, it might be a pension plan. These pension plans, the state of Texas has a pension plan for every police and fire school teacher, and they'll put 3% with Ares. It could be a government. They call them sovereign wealth funds. These Middle Eastern countries that have all this oil money, they're called sovereign wealth funds. There's big, big pockets of money. We like Ares. We're going to give them 3% of the pie. 3% of that pie is a big. So make sure when you're walking in and you're talking to someone at Merrill Lynch about an internship in wealth management, that you don't confuse that with somebody on Wall Street buying and selling bonds. A bond trader. Completely different. Okay, that's different from what I do, that's different from what he does, and then that's another one. So let's get the terminology right. So when you're talking about investments, if you happen to be walking by the TV and you see those numbers, or you hear the news, the market was down 383 points today. That is publicly traded stocks and bonds. And now, it's so good that if you want to grab your phone, you can go, bing! Hey, I just bought 10 shares of Home Depot. So you can do that minute by minute. That's a publicly traded stock or bond. You can do that. Or you can have a financial advisor do it. In my world, there are private businesses. When we invested in Miami Dolphins, the Miami Dolphins, we invested $800 million for 10% ownership. We're 10% owners of Miami Dolphins. There was a gentleman named Stephen Ross. That is a transaction. That's like me walking up to your parents and buying the house. This is not like a stock where you hit a buy button. Okay, it's not traded. It's a private investment. There's a ton of investments out there that are private businesses, private sports, and we negotiate and then we close the deal. So that's my company, the $600 billion we do. None of it is publicly traded stocks, bonds. Don't ask me about that world because I don't pay that much attention to it. And we're private investment, private equity, private credit, private sports. I'll stop right there because I just want to make sure we get all the lingo down whenever you're trying to get these great internships. And then I can tell you about what we're doing specifically in sports because it's exciting.
Question for both of you is, why would I not want to have my portfolio just in the market or different? Why would I go to that? Why would we consider private equity? Why would we consider, why would you want to diversify yourself like that?
I would just say, for my part, is I'm never going to get rich because I'm diversified. So if I put something in Bitcoin and it goes times 10, if I had all of my money in my life in Bitcoin, I'd be like, I'm rich. But I put $3,000 in there. You're times 10, what is that? Is that 30,000?
Yeah.
30,000. I'm not gonna go buy a yacht for 30,000. So if the more you diversify, you're not gonna make the big bucks. But so that. If you look at a big pension plan, the state of Florida has a pension plan. It's $450 billion. I can guarantee you nothing is more than 3%.
Yeah.
It's sliced up in
That's
so
high.
many slices.
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Fernando, do you take companies public or no?
It happens sometimes. So, we'll buy a company and then we do a lot of things to it. And either A, they'll sell to another private buyer, like one private equity firm selling it to another private equity firm. We cleaned it up, we fixed it up, we held it for 5 years, now it's really good, and then you wanna buy it. And then maybe you wanna buy it because you wanna combine it with something else, and then it will go. I heard this morning that SpaceX is finally gonna go public. SpaceX is a giant company, it's been private up until now. So sometimes these private companies, they either are gonna be bought by another big buyer and stay private, sometimes they'll go public. And then ding, 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 they'll be in the stock market.
And will you help them get registered with the SEC, or that's different?
No, that's the whole concept, that's another part of finance. That's something that he doesn't do, that's what we don't do. It's called investment banking. And he has some geniuses at Merrill Lynch that they talk to the corporations about becoming public. That's a separate.
So that's the question I was gonna pose to all of you. Who has heard me speak in the spring? No, the last 1 or 2 years, you heard me before? So I do spend a moment, if we have time, I'll get into it, right? Because I think it's really important to frame out what the industry looks like. I lay it out as those entities or kind of parties in the capital markets that have money and those that need money, and we'll talk about the jargon if we have some time at the end, okay? Any other questions for Fernando? Because I know he wants to get into private companies, private credit, private equity. Who can name a private company, a well-known private company here in Miami? I'm sorry?
No, I don't know.
Or a private company?
New Balance?
New Balance? Okay, yeah.
Is New Balance a
I
private?
imagine they are. Anyone else, private companies? SpaceX was one you mentioned, yes?
Ripple's in Miami,
Ripple? Ripple, so you're a crypto bro. Huh? A little bit of crypto bro?
No, like
How
a
about-
big private company.
How about a
that we
company
all-
that you guys, an application that I know you guys use, Canva? Canva. Canva.
I'm gonna make a mistake and say, but I think I'm right. What's the biggest private company in Florida? We all see them everywhere. They're not public, you can't buy their stock. They're still private. Oh,
Green.
Who's
Green
it, Publix?
company.
There you go. Publix.
We all said
All right, easy. I think this guy did too, right?
Yeah.
No? Okay. Look, he's honest. He should get a hat just for being honest.
So Fernando, why don't you kind of elaborate a little bit more on private, you talked about private equity. What is private credit? Because private credit, it's been the golden age of private credit.
Yeah. Well,
And these guys are a huge player in private credit.
I could spend a lot of time talking about private equity, private credit, and it's tough. But it's just like a bond, actually, if you buy a bond that trades, it's a loan. But it's just traded. You can buy it like bing. But if there's a loan that's not traded, the bond market, and let's say I make a loan to a company for $500 million, and they have to pay. That is a private loan. That's between Aries and Publix. Okay, they're expanding into Louisiana. They're opening 20 stores. They need a loan. We make them a loan for $500 million. So that's a private loan, private credit loan, kind of the same word, again, lingo. So, and in private equity is me not loaning money to a company, but buying a company. I bought Publix. It cost $10 billion. That's a private company. There's a lot of big private companies. SpaceX is private. And so that's private equity. We're just buying the whole company. We're not loaning them money. Now, in my sports business, most all of them. There might be one or two. I think Green Bay is publicly traded,
Green Bay
right?
Packers, I think in the UK, Manchester United.
Manchester, but 95% of them are private. So your average NFL team's owned by some guy that's 70 years old and has been in the family for 40, 50 years. Now what's changing is big money like Ares and Blackstone and Apollo are coming in. And recently the Giants sold, the Celtics sold, the Lakers sold. Chicago Bears, $8 billion. Lakers, $10 billion. And so now you're starting to see this giant money like Ares come in, professional managers. So we bought from a guy named Stephen Ross. He's 78 years old. He's made a fortune in real estate. Actually, he took our 800 million and he thinks the next big thing is West Palm Beach. This guy's building hospitals, schools, everything. But anyway, my point is that was a negotiation in private investment. So what I want to tell you about sports, because everybody likes talking about sports, it's a business. We've got a team of people that they do all the analysis before we plop down the money for the Dolphins. These are nerds. They're numbers, accounting nerds. Now, they get to go sit down with the coach of the Dolphins and be on the sideline. I mean, look, Fernando Mendoza's one out of a million. This kid played quarterback here, might win the Heisman Trophy. Sounds like he's a hell of a business student. So he knows the accounting, the numbers, and all of that stuff. The reason that you're going to be analyzing some of these investments at Ares, we bought a cricket team. We invested in Inter Miami. By the way, oh shoot, I was going to ask. I just gave the answer. Who are the other two investors besides Ares in Inter Miami? Who? Well, not the company, but the family, right? Don't confuse their company. That's right. And who else? Beckham. Who said that? You don't get a second one. Thanks. Who else? Copycat. All right. So Beckham and Ares, we're in business with the Moss family. And so when we make that investment, by the way, before Messi even came to town, that's been a good investment for us. $225 million. It's numbers. These are businesses. Do you know how much money the Dolphins make? By the way, if they don't sell one ticket, the stadium's crickets, they don't sell one jersey, they get $450 million check every year just from media. So Netflix, Amazon, Google, YouTube, they're all fighting. Like, I want the Thursday night game. It can be yours for $8 billion. We'll give you a 10-year contract. Amazon says, put me down. So you want to watch the Thursday night game? You got to go into Amazon Prime, right? Netflix says, I want the Christmas Day game. It can be yours, Netflix, for $10 billion. So they're getting all of these media rights deals. Now, by the way, who can tell me why Netflix wants it? Why does Netflix want? Yes.
So they can sell subscriptions.
Well, yeah, and they already have people that subscribe, so is it gonna make them even more happy? Is it gonna make them stay in there a little bit longer? You can only watch Landman or whatever your favorite thing is, so many times. Oh, there's a documentary on Michael Jordan, done that. Now what else? Live, unscripted content. It's king. And when he was talking to his clients and they're all going, oh my God, the tariffs, Trump, Liberation Day. Market's doing this. There were 8 million people the next day watching grown men hit little golf balls. It's called the Masters. Live, unscripted content. People love it. People love it. And so there's lots of value. That's why Netflix and Amazon, they're willing to pay billions of dollars to these. Let me turn it back over to you.
No, I thought that was a great conversation. Any questions? I saw a hand up over here. No? Okay, perfect. So let's talk about this specific transaction, the Inter Miami transaction. You got into it, what was the use of the proceeds, why did they come to you for money? Talk about the transaction a little bit more, and it's pretty much public knowledge, so.
Yeah,
get into whatever you
so
want.
I think that, you know, a lot of these are relationships, so they're in the big infrastructure business, I'm sure at some
By the way,
point.
one slide that I created for you is this.
Oh, wow, okay. Nice, nice, okay. Yeah, so in our fund, it's not just the Dolphins, it's diversified, okay? And in that fund, 1/3 is teams and leagues. Like the Dolphins, Atletico de Madrid, we have a cricket team out of the UK. By the way, the number 2, everybody thinks it's soccer, number 2 biggest moneymaker for media rights in the world behind the NFL is cricket. Cricket. You like cricket? No. They used to be like 2 or 3 days long. I think
Incredible.
they got it down to 2 or 3.
Shocking, I can't believe it.
They shortened it. But so we bought a team in the town of Trent. It's close to London, the Trent Rockets, a cricket team. So 1/3 is teams and sports. The other team is sports related. So we did a loan to San Diego Padres. That same family are owners of Rollins. You know Rollins, the sports equipment, right? CCM, hockey sticks. We invest, that's sports related. And then another sports related, one of my favorites, it's called Live Barn. They installed cameras in all these like high school fields all over. And if your dad's on a business trip, or your mom's on a business trip, or your grandparents live in another state, they can pay for a streaming service and watch you playing ball. And by the way, you don't have to be Fernando Mendoza. You can just be on an 11-year-old on a soccer field. They're watching it. So it's really cool. And then the last one is media and entertainment, like music rights, like Taylor Swift, like all of that stuff. So that's the portfolio. Thanks for putting that up. And Inter Miami is just another deal. Look, who paid the media rights? How did we get Messi to come to the U.S.? Apple.
TV.
Apple. They said, if you could get him to come to the U.S., we're going to show the games, and we will pay. So if you come home to the Dolphins, or you come home to Inter Miami and said, I just signed up Apple, the cash register is ringing. That's a lot of money, because they're paying to show your games, and that's how we got it.
Awesome. We have how much, 12 minutes, 3:30? Okay, so I'd like to just kind of get into, maybe Fernando, you can start, get into how you began in the industry, what your path looked like from high school, college, internships perhaps, in about 60 seconds.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody that's getting into my business now is 100 times smarter than I was in high school or in college. It's sad, but it's true. And my recommendation to you is, if everybody wants to be in private equity because they make good money. Yeah, well, guess what? You and everyone else. So you better be good in math, you better be good in accounting, you better flip through the pages of the Wall Street Journal. You better get internships right when you get to college. In the old days, you got an internship when you were a junior, senior. You got to get those internships right away. And then you start learning a little bit more about the industry. And so I got in working at Merrill Lynch in Fort Worth, Texas, smiling and dialing like this. And then I went over into the other side. So now I'm on the asset management side, and I've been doing this for 30 years in different capacities. So it's been very good to me and my family. I feel very, very blessed. But it's hard now. It's just hard to get. It's just like the competition. All you guys are so smart. You're already your link. You got link. Does anybody have a LinkedIn page?
Great question, yeah?
You got a LinkedIn. Look, this guy. Come on, you guys need to talk to this guy, okay?
I see Max on
Anybody else
LinkedIn
got
all
a
the time.
LinkedIn page? You got a LinkedIn page?
And that's how I
Awesome.
know his name. Guys, that's how I know his name, because I see him, he comments on this, he likes this. That's how I see Max.
Come on, you guys get a LinkedIn page. Connect with Ken. Connect with myself. Now you got one contact.
So in my case, I was class of 1990. I was on the SAC. Do we still have SAC?
Yeah.
SAC? SAC, yeah. So I was the sales committee head of SAC. So I would go and sell Columbus boxers to the Lourdes girls. I went over to Lourdes every afternoon, sold them boxers and other merch. But slowly but surely got interested in finance because my dad, early on, he followed a local public company called Ryder Systems, right? And sure enough, we go full circle here. So that's how I got interested in finance, following Ryder shares. That got me interested in the equity market. I go to Georgetown for undergrad, I study finance there, and the rest is history. But now, again, full circle moment. We have a Columbus grad that's the chairman, no longer the CEO, but the chairman of Ryder, which is just wonderful, wonderful. So I studied that in college. I was a credit analyst, actually, for Nations Bank, predecessor to Bank of America. I went to business school. I went to NYU Stern School of Business, which is a great, finance program as well. And then I stayed in New York, working for the big German bank, Deutsche Bank, selling investment grade credit. So selling corporate bonds, credit derivatives, and other forms of structured credit to institutional investors. Again, for those that want to stick around, I'd be happy to kind of go through the industry on the dry erase board. It's a real good summary for anyone that's really interested and wants to learn more to figure out where everyone is in the industry. It's hard. And then I worked on the trading floor for those 7 years or so in New York. So 2 years for business school, 7 years working at Deutsche, until I finally decided to come back home. And I married a woman whose dad was, now he's 50 years at Merrill Lynch. So he began his career at Merrill Lynch Hong Kong. Fast forward, the first third of his career was doing institutional business with institutional clients like I did. And then the second third of his career was dealing with private wealth clients. So I joined his practice and we've been growing it ever since. So that's kind of my life in a nutshell. I want to invite Jose Medina. We have a few minutes. Jose Medina joined our team 9 years ago. He's an up-and-coming member of the team. Pretty soon we're going to mint him a fully fledged financial advisor, which is a great accomplishment on his part. And Jose's a millennial, so a little bit closer in age to you guys. So why don't you first of all, introduce yourself, tell the guys a little bit about yourself, and maybe give them a few tips and pointers coming out of school, what it looked like for you, and what it takes to get to your position at age 30.
32. Well, thank you, Ken. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Colleen. Rosie, thank you guys. It's good to be here. How are you guys? How's it going? Good. I was born in Colombia. I moved to the U.S. when I was 8 years old. I've lived in a few different places. Primarily, I went to high school in Ocala, Florida, Forest High School. I graduated from there. I started going to FIU for economics. I was working at Bank of America while I was going to school. It was a good experience. FIU was a good school, and I learned a lot working while I was also going to school. I started working at Merrill after I graduated from economics at FIU. I joined Ken's team right away, which was honestly very fortunate for me. Ken and Tony's team is one of the best in the industry, and it's at the top tier of Merrill. So when you think about Merrill, there's wealth management and then private wealth management, and that's what we said. So it's been a great ride. I've learned a lot, and it's a good industry to work at. It's a huge. When you think about finance, it's huge, right? I mean, Fernando got into it. There's so many things that you can do in finance. So find what you like and kind of focus on that. And pivoting a little bit to, just want to keep it short, but I guess a little bit of advice that I would give that would help you succeed and grow, right? Knowledge is everywhere now. You have AI, you have internet, Wikipedia, whatever. You can learn things, and you should. You should focus on learning, on staying on top of current events, reading the news, reading articles that you find interesting, things that are going to help you have conversations with people. That's very, very important. Very important to network. More so than the knowledge, there's something that's going to help you differentiate yourself more than just the knowledge, more than what you know. Are certain attributes that you can build, right? And number one, I would say, is your attitude. The attitude that you bring to school, the attitude that you bring to work, to sports, whatever it is. Try to have a good attitude. Try to be positive. Try to want to help. We're not robots. We're not perfect. You're going to feel better some days than others, but try to work on that. Try to be positive and really, people will remember that and people will appreciate that. The other thing I would say is try to be dependable and try to be available. So dependable meaning if you tell someone you're going to do something, do it. And If you make a mistake, own up to it and learn from it. That's huge. If you make a mistake, everyone makes mistakes. You know, we're human. Own up to it, learn from it, and try to move forward. Try to be available as much as possible within what's reasonable, so that if somebody needs something, you can be available. That maybe that'll be a big opportunity, right? So try to be available. And yeah, I think that's it. It's thankful to Ken and thank you to you guys for showing up. That's big, right? Showing up and for this type of stuff.
I think that you guys participating in these series, I think you learn so much more than the next person. So that when you are in front of someone like myself, Jose, Fernando, you're gonna know some of the lingo, right? At the end of the day, we're gonna hire someone that we feel comfortable sitting next to us for 12, 13 hours a day, right? So it's gonna be someone that looks like us, and these are the things I talk about in the spring. So dress well, finance guys are generally conservative types, right? So solid color and a little bit of, I always tell people just a little pattern, you know, whatever color you want, but a little minute little pattern is always very elegant and professional. Grooming is important. Your LinkedIn profile, following up, all these are things that I talk about in the spring. Your resume, I mean, we spend a lot of time on resume formatting. Right now, guys, AI can catch any mistake you make on a resume. And that is the easiest way to weed out candidates, is just very simply, this period is out of place, or a resume should be a document that you've poured over for months. And so there's no excuse for errors on a document like a resume. So it's a real easy way for us to kind of weed out people. Poor attention to detail, not meticulous, and not focused. It's just garbage can, garbage can, garbage can. So we talk about all that in the spring. But
Can I
I think,
add one quick thing
Yeah.
to that? I have a son who's in college and he goes to career fairs and he sends stuff. And he's like, Dad, I sent it to him, they didn't reply. I was like, join my world.
yeah.
Are you kidding? So how many times did we try them? Once. We're like, you gotta follow up. And it may not be that they're trying to like be rude to you. They got 800 emails. They saw it for a quick second and it just got lost.
Yeah, that's what
So
happened to
you
me.
gotta come back. And then, what if they tell you to go, I like you and we need to meet for lunch. And then your next 3 calls and 3 emails don't get answered. If that guy told me he was willing to meet me for lunch, I'm not gonna stop. I'll probably show up and say, hi, I was in the neighborhood, I just wanted to stop. I mean, come on, you gotta keep going.
In fact, frankly, and we talked about this kind of when you connect with people on LinkedIn. The bare minimum effort, sorry, I'm getting off topic, but I think it's so important. Because my son, who's at another all-guys school in town, we won't get into it. His friend, so they're getting into LinkedIn, all this stuff, and his friend sends me a connection request. And of course, I sit on it for weeks, right? And until my son came up to me the other day, he's like, hey, why didn't you kind of accept my good friend's connection request? And I said, Nico, your friend did the bare minimum, the absolute bare minimum to connect me. I don't even know the kid, I barely know the kid. I just know him name and seen him a few times. But clicking a connect button doesn't get you a connection for someone that you don't know at all. LinkedIn lets you craft a 300-character message that goes together with your connection request. And there you have 300 characters to say, hey, here's what. Be nice. Give someone a reason to connect with you. Give someone a reason to connect with you, and then someone may. But the bare minimum effort gives you the bare minimum response, right? And so that's something that we'll talk about in the spring, if I'm allowed to come back. Huh? That'll be fun. Okay, guys, so it's 3:30. Any other questions that you guys have? We covered a lot of territory today. Public markets, private markets, registration thing. Yeah.
Why is it so important to diversify when you put all your money into like stocks instead of just putting all your money in anything?
So that's a great question. The question is, why is it important to diversify versus just picking one investment? because no one has a crystal ball, and no one knows how one company may or may not do. In fact, you may argue that, hey, I'll put all my money in, pick your Mag 7 stock, or pick a private company like OpenAI and Sam Altman. technology, things are evolving so quickly. Look what happened recently, just in the last 2 weeks. All of a sudden, this news came out about Google's Gemini. Right now, Gemini is the tool that everyone is flocking to away from ChatGPT. So what do you think has happened to valuations between these two companies? Sure, you could have put all your eggs and put all your chips on in OpenAI, private company, you don't have access to it, these guys do, right? And that would have gone forward, right? Google's shares have really done well over the last 2 weeks. Any other questions? All right, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate your help.
One second.
Hold on, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna take a quick pick.
Yeah.
So the three of you guys can come sit here in the middle. And guys, I need you guys to crunch in.
Gotta get up.
Good afternoon, Columbus. Marcus Rivera, please report to Marist Circle. Marcus Rivera, please report to Marist
All right,
Circle.
so
Thank you.
we're all gonna stand up. Let's surround our speakers, please. We're gonna do no C at first. We're just gonna be nice and serious. We learned some. Wait, let me take these chairs. We are finance pros today. Yeah, you're missing the best, but we got it. Okay, right hand C. And we're not gonna cover our face.
There you go.
Awesome, thank you
Nice.
so much, thank our speakers. Guys, here's your attendance QR, scan yourselves in.
I offered to chat with everyone who wants to stick around. We'll go through the industry in 5 minutes.
If you guys want an investment banking crash class, stay here for a few minutes.
iPhone 14.
Thanks for coming, guys. Jose, thanks for coming.
Oh, we got this. Is this taped? I think so. Oh, really? Wow.
If you guys want to stay for the investment banking crash course, let's go over here to the front on the left. We might have a part two.
No, I said it.
This is a pop star crowd.
Who is that guy?
Back in the day, man, back in the day.
You get that receipt?
No, no, seriously, you can tell it's a little bit beat up, right?
Or did you have it? You're in good company. That's what I'm saying. You know, we gave away a bunch more. To people that had money. You're in good company with that,
Exactly.
Joaquin Gonzalez, right?
You wanna have it?
And you can tell this junior Joaquin's son.
Tomorrow.
See, those
Both these.
So those are my first.
Also now,
They had a graduation.
Chips fall.
I thought you were the
You know?
Yeah, the Vinny's my
You don't know what they're looking for, then you get a girl every year.
Brandon.
It might be.
You have to have another cousin, or Josh.
Yeah.
Josh, your cousin also?
Put your husband forward and
So
see
who are you
how-
related to?
My dad's related to, Regina Nato.
I mean, like, I really,
Well,
I
Regina,
really, like,
and then Nato is his dad.
Right.
And then my dad's also related to Ron,
I think it's all in the.
I'm their second cousin.
So your cousins with Georgina, Tony, and Joaquin,
This is.
or you're their second, your dad's their cousin.
My dad's their cousin.
Got it, so your second cousin.
Vinny and Joshua, I'm their second.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I know the whole family. I like Georgina the best. It's all Joaquin.
For your, so mom can go pick up stuff.
Yes, it's at our office, so try to just do the hall pass or just come by.
Not only
You know where we
artists,
are.
producers,
I
music.
passed by there
He
today.
made it.
If you guys go over
We
here.
don't know how to get games with this. Yeah, he's called it's on Amazon Prime. I don't know. You can still buy it.
Do you like golf? You wanna start playing golf?
It's about, street artists and
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
All right, is anyone sticking around for
Do we have any
kind
investment
of a
banking?
banking crash course? I'll do it, but it's gonna be really fast.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When, so let's say you do, let's say, he's trying to sell you part of a company.
Yeah.
Let's say that company does go public, will they buy the stocks back? Will they buy it back to you?
If the, say again.
So, when,
Aries has a private company.
let's say, I don't know, Titus, right? Let's say Titus was buying something, they buy 10% of Titus. They come to you, send you the 10% or a percentage.
They can sell all or some of it or all of it, or they can also take a public exercise. So they can do it again. As long as the person buying it, the investor buying it is private. So when you're talking about private companies and private markets, it really has to be qualified investors. Because there's no liquidity. The reason why you have to deal with only qualified investors is because there's no way out. Generally, there's no way out if you call it a private sale. Much like, unlike Amazon shares or Google shares, what have you, you just call me up or just click and you get out of your position. So that's why you really need to have qualified investors, because it's
And let's say, so what he does is he sells you some stocks, like equity. And that equity, if you want to sell it, you can sell it to anybody you want.
again, it has to be qualified investors.
And let's say you can go sell it to Blackstone.
Yeah. Big boys, you can't go and sell it to widows and orphans. You can't go sell it to random people on the street because they don't have liquidity, they don't have sophistication, they don't have analyze and value private companies. So Blackstone, Ordinary.
With that, with the, let's say that's 10%, he gives you 1%. So you give that, he's gonna pay you dividends, how do you get money on
Well, the company's gonna pay all shareholders. So how do you make money on it? It's very different. When you're a private company, or a private investor in a private company, the only way that you can kind of make money is if the company continues to grow and you get a liquidity event. Either the company sells itself, right?